Photos can capture moments of joy, love, and friendship, but sometimes they capture something far more sinister. Today we'll explore chilling photos taken by serial killers, eerie final glimpses of victims moments before their tragic fate. The final photo of 14-year-old Regina K. Walters, taken by serial killer Robert Ben Rhodes. She was one of the women he held captive in his torture chamber. The photos were taken in an abandoned barn. In 1979, investigators found hundreds of photos of women in a storage unit that serial killer Rodney Alcala rented in Seattle. They released some of them in 2010 in hopes of identifying the women, some of whom may be additional unknown victims. One of the hundreds of women photographed by Rodney Alcala. Investigators also found other trophies in his storage unit, like jewelry. Rodney Alcala with a possible victim. Her photo is included on the list of unidentified individuals, potentially a victim. Dennis Rader was known as the BTK killer because of his method of binding, torturing, and killing his victims. Afterward, he would don his victims' clothing, tie himself up, and take photos. Serial killer and necrophiliac Jerry Brudos took this photo of 19-year-old college student Karen Sprinker in his garage. He had kidnapped her from a department store parking lot and brought her to his house, where he made her model women's underwear and pose for photos. He killed her by hanging her from a hook in his ceiling, then had sex with her body and cut off her breasts. Judith Dull, a 19-year-old aspiring model, was lured by glamour girl killer Harvey Glattman, who posed as a photographer in Los Angeles. Promising work, he tied, photographed, and eventually murdered her. She had arrived at his hotel expecting to pose for a crime fiction magazine. Shirley Ann Bridgeford, 24, met Harvey Glattman through a dating service. Posing as George Williams, Glattman took her on a countryside drive instead of dancing as they'd planned. In a remote location, he forced her to undress, raped, photographed, and humiliated her before strangling her and leaving her body behind. Model Ruth Mercado, shortly before Glattman killed her. Christine Thornton, who disappeared in 1977, was identified by one of her relatives in 2013 among a batch of photographs taken by Alcala. This photograph of Thornton was taken just a short distance from where her remains were discovered in 1982. Serial killer Samuel Little didn't photograph his victims, but he did draw many of them, which has helped investigators identify them. This illustration is described as drawing of black female victim Mary Ann. Little says he killed Ann in Miami, Florida in either 1971 or 1972. Another killer posing as a photographer was William Richard Bradford. In 1984, while out on bail for a rape charge, Bradford met bartender Sherry Miller. Promising to help her kickstart a modeling career, he took her to a scenic desert spot outside LA and snapped a few pictures before strangling her to death. He then cut off her tattoos and drove her body back to Hollywood, where he disposed of it in a dumpster. One of the last photographs taken of Assunta Bastera before she was killed by her adoptive parents. This photo of a terrified, handcuffed boy was found among serial killer Dean Corll's pictures, but his identity remains unknown. Known as the Candyman Killer, Corll murdered an estimated 28 boys and young men between 1970 and 1973. This photo of Samantha Koenig, taken by serial killer Israel Keyes, was meant to convince Koenig's family that she was still alive. In fact, Koenig had already been dead for weeks, and Keyes had sewn her eyes open with fishing line. A serial killer who operated in Soviet Russia between 1964 and 1985, Anatoly Slivko is believed to have murdered 7 teenage boys. He posed this victim and others in an attempt to recreate a fatal traffic accident he'd witnessed in his early 20s, which sexually aroused him. The last photo of Madison Jamison, who, along with her father and mother, Bobby and Sherilyn Jamison, disappeared on October 8, 2009. Their remains were found on November 16, 2013. The photo is believed to have been taken by their unknown killer. Chris Bryson, a would-be victim of serial killer and torturer Robert Berdella. Unlike some of Berdella's less fortunate victims, who were bound and tortured for days on end, Bryson managed to escape in 1988 and alerted the police to Berdella's activities. Some believe that this photograph depicts Tara Calico and Michael Henley, both of whom went missing in New Mexico in 1988 and have never been found. Their fates remain unknown. This is the last photo of Travis Alexander, taken in the shower moments before he was stabbed and shot to death by Jodi Arias in 2008.